about her and introducing her. My great pleasure to have her speak here at her temple, our temple. And I was thinking how she embodies the qualities so well of all of the four powers. The maiden, joyful, whole unto herself, funny, fully in sisterhood. And this is Karen. Karen is a really good sister. I can call Karen up and I can say things that I probably should not say to anybody, but they're safe with her. They're totally safe with her. She is a good sister, someone I can laugh with. The maiden, the mother. The mother is the worker, the creatrix, the one who works hard. That's why they call it labor. You know, she labors to bring things into the physical world. And I don't know anyone who has labored in such a beautiful way to bring so many beautiful things. Her books, her radio show. She works so hard to bring goodness to the world. That is the job of a mother. She is a very, very fine mother. The Queen. The Queen has a vision for life. She is the architect of life. Karen has an incredible vision for life, as you read in her books. She has this incredible vision that she gives to all of us. And we just get on board because it is a beautiful, beautiful thing for all of us. And the wise woman. Karen is wise. When I speak to Karen privately in our private conversations, she always says the most wise things to me. Like, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? Yeah. And then when she stands before us, and particularly in this partnership series that she's doing, 4 presentations on partnership, this is the second of the 4, she says wise things. We need women like Karen. She is an author, she is a radio show host, Voices of the Sacred Feminine. She is a teacher, she is a speaker, she is a ritualist, and she is an international goddess spirituality leader. And she was voted one of the most influential women in goddess spirituality, a well-deserved title. Please give a warm welcome to one of our favorite speakers, Reverend Dr. Karen Tate.
Well, thank you all for coming today. Yeah, we're recording this for Riane Eisler's website, so we have to make sure we get the sound right. Does the sound seem okay, Roy? Okay, good. So, like Ava said, I'm Karen Tate, and I'm here today to give you the second in our 4-part series on partnership. Because, quite frankly, I am a firm believer that it's partnership that can and will heal the world. And the first talk that I gave last week was on partnership with ourselves. And that is such an important thing, because there aren't very many people out there telling us to think about our quality of life. So I want to talk to you about partnership, but first I want to actually honor Riane Eisler, the woman who got me on this path. And if you weren't here last 4th Sunday, she wrote the famous book, The Chalice and the Blade, and she also wrote Our Real Wealth and The Power of Partnership, which this series actually comes from. And she not only taught us about her history, which is, you know, alternative history that we don't learn, you know, in our traditional educational systems. You know, she taught us, you know, what was happening 30,000 years ago, 40,000 years ago, when we had egalitarian societies, when so many societies actually worshipped the mother. But she took it a step further, which I think is so important. You know, she had a vision. She became a moral compass, if you will. It wasn't just about history and even spirituality. It was about how are we going to be in the world. And that's when, you know, I started learning about partnership. And, you know, when you think about partnership, you know, it's either partnership or domination. And of course we have some things in between. And Riane Eisler talked about the dominator pyramid. Now the language that we all might recognize is the 99% versus the 1% in some sense. But you know, when we go through life, things just become normal to us. And she is asking us, she is teaching us to question what we see going on in our own life, with our intimate others, in our local and global community, with spirit. Are we experiencing a life of partnership, or are we experiencing a life of domination? And we have to start being aware and think about that, because oftentimes, you know, some religions teach us to suffer and sacrifice, and you know, they don't really tell us to be all that we can be, or what is your quality of life, or you know, maybe you're working too hard for too little, those sorts of things. So anyway, just real quickly, we won't go into a lot of it, but some examples of domination, for instance, or you know, excessive corporatism, austerity, incrementalism, control, power over, even you know, predator capitalism. Partnership, though, on the other hand, is egalitarianism, respect, caring economics, populism, democratic socialism. And what we came to at the last talk was, we can't change everything, but we can change ourselves. And what we have to really strive for is balance. Balance is the key between our healthy body and our mind and our spirit. And really, when it comes down to it, are you a good friend to yourself? You know, always ask yourself, are you being a good friend to yourself? Does your life have meaning? You know, or are you just a hamster on a wheel? And can you break the shackles of your gender, of society, of politics, of religion, of culture? Can you break those shackles that keep you in a narrow little box? But because partnership with self and partnership with intimate others, they're very closely connected. And we need to realize that partnership, you know, we experience it or don't experience it as early as the time we're in the womb. Because when we're in the womb, in the first years of our life, if we are experiencing empathy, attention, stimulation, cooperation, nurturing, well then we are experiencing partnership. And if we do experience partnership in the womb in these very early years, then we become a more emotionally balanced person and a stable adult who can thrive and be creative and know right from wrong. But on the other hand, if we are brought up in a dominator society or a dominator family of neglect, abuse, maybe it's an insensitive family, maybe it's a high-stress family, maybe it's a fear-based family, well, then we never reach our fullest potential. Statistics show that we have 20 to 30% smaller brains, and we don't learn caring and empathy. So, you know, when you see people out there in the world who are acting in a dominator way, you know, you can usually track it back to what they experienced in their childhood home. And what we need to learn to do, and if we're thinking about maybe turning these into some workshops, because I'm just, you know, kind of hitting some of the high points here, is we have to learn to reprogram our script, the one that we've been told all of our life. We have to be able to turn our back on conflicting messages. Now, some of these you've probably heard before, you know, but they're worth repeating. Because, again, you know, we take so many of these things as just normal rather than things we have to learn to shed. For instance, boys shouldn't be taught to suppress their humanity or their empathy or their emotions. And they really shouldn't be told that they're the superior gender. Real masculinity does not equate with domination and violence. You know, you're not a real man just because you're violent and domineering or controlling. And, you know, when you have a dominating or controlling person, that's the person who's maybe going to beat their wife or kick the dog or exploit their coworkers or minorities. You know, maybe they're going to bully people, they're going to body shame people. people, maybe use racial or religious slurs, maybe even date rape. Now, likewise, these are people without healthy boundaries. But women too, women get bad messages. With girls in patriarchy, they learn, unfortunately, that, they should be small, they should be quiet, that they have no value oftentimes, especially depending on where they grow up or what religion they're a part of. And girls have to learn that it's necessary to speak up and be assertive. It's necessary. That they shouldn't be embarrassed about their bodies or their sexuality. And their role is not to be submissive, humiliated, to be eye candy for someone. Or, they're not here for the pleasure of others. So we all have to learn, whether we're men or women, to be proactive rather than reactive. And we really do have to learn to get toxic people out of our lives. Now, I'm fond of saying something that maybe to some of you might sound controversial, but I'll just say it because I believe it from the bottom of my heart. Family can be overrated. Sometimes, we learn everything at the dining room table, and sometimes, family is the source of our issues. So sometimes we even have to learn to get not just toxic friends out of our life, but sometimes toxic family too. Right. And we have to give ourselves permission to face that because we only have one life, and it's up to us to make our life the best that we can be. So just a few things, so that if you can recognize dominator patterns and start to leave them behind. Dating people, or are you dating people, or are you surrounded by people who support you or use you? I mean, think about that. Sometimes we cut our friends an awful lot of slack. Sometimes we give them so much rope they hang themselves, So your friends, your family, do they want you to be who you really want to be? Or are they pressing you to be who society says you should be, or the church down the street tells you you should be or shouldn't be? The people that you work with, or the people that you work for, do they respect your rights? Or are they cruel, selfish? Do they exploit you? Are they prejudiced, manipulative? Do they maybe tell you to do things you shouldn't do, maybe to save them money, but it maybe gets you hurt or puts you in a bad situation? That's domination. That's not okay. Also, whether it's your coworker or your social group, or the people in your group team players, or are they competitive? Because partnership is about, it's not just about the I, it's about the us. Also, social, economic, and historical factors affect our quality of life. And, you can think back to how you were treated growing up in community. How are you treated now in community? Do you have the courage to walk away from a community that maybe doesn't appreciate you or encourage you or to become the best that you can be? I mean, we saw how Ava and the priestesses here at the beginning of the service showed gratitude, showed appreciation. That's putting partnership into action. That's the kind of support that we all need in our life. And you can do what you can in your work environment, your home environment, to encourage that type of partnership, that kind of respect. And, let me just say, sex, it's a big deal. And, I know I grew up in the bubble of the South, and sex was taboo. Can we remember when you couldn't even see a pregnant woman in public? Sex is a shameful thing to some folks. And, we have to, get back to the point of understanding that sex and sacred sexuality, that's just a natural part of life. And if we're caught up in these ideas of sexuality being shameful, that's a dominator script that's been put in your head. No, I'm not talking about pornography and stuff like that. I'm talking about healthy sexual relationship with your loved one or your partner, or just women as sexual beings, their sacred blood, their life-giving ability. Those aren't things that should be taboo. Those are things that should be reveled in.
Yeah.
And, we do that in Goddess community. We have red tents and we do things like that so women can start to appreciate the sacredness of their bodies again. So if you're getting different messages out there in the world, remember, is it domination or is it partnership? So just an exercise for home. Takes inventory of what's going on in your life or at home. Are you seeing more domination or are you seeing partnership? And is there anything you can do to squelch the domination and maybe encourage more partnership? Maybe even keep a list. If you're in a relationship with other people in your household or in your family, keep a list for a few weeks of who does what around the house. Are certain chores valued more than others? Maybe they should be, maybe they shouldn't be, but think about that. Start being aware and shift things. And the last thing I'll suggest is to jot down ways caring work is not valued at home or in your place of work. Think about all the women who have maybe given up their life to take care of an aging parent. And maybe it was just expected because, that's what the woman does. And maybe the woman never got a chance to go to college or raise her own family or travel to Greece, because somebody put her in a box and said, you're supposed to do this. So think about these different things. And when you see it going on, give yourself permission to reject it. Because we all need lives and partnership, and we really have to find all sorts of ways and get creative to do away with domination. So I want to close with an example of a couple that exhibited partnership as intimate others. Now, a good friend of mine, Jeanette Lacey, was going to come today and present this to you, but she was not feeling well today. So I'm going to just share a few excerpts. Ava, do you have the pictures of, how does this work?
You're asking me.
Is it the green?
No person. Okay, it's just
okay.
The arrow pointing up
Forward, okay. So, just to kind of give you kind of a little bit of a history lesson, but, I don't think it's boring at all. You look at Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt. They were a great example of partnership. Now, when you first think about partnership, you may think of great love stories. Antony and Cleopatra, Abigail Adams and John Adams. But these people were unique. They weren't the great love story. Instead, they were partners that really complemented each other. So it kind of gives us a different sense of all the many ways partnership can actually be in the world. So I'm going to share a little bit about them, about this historical couple. Now, you might say, didn't they have serious marital issues? And wasn't he constantly unfaithful? Didn't she have same-sex relationships outside of marriage? Weren't they sexually inactive from 1918 forward? And the answers to all of these questions are probably yes. But the Roosevelts are a great example of intimate partnership despite these issues and because of these issues. Even without the trappings of romance and sexual fulfillment, the marriage was one of the most successful relationships in history, and America is a better place because of their partnership. Now, this is one of their pictures. Here's when they were older in life. And here you see them a little bit younger. Now, both came from wealthy backgrounds. Franklin grew up the pampered son of an overbearing mother. But Eleanor, on the other hand, suffered many losses in her life. Her parents, brother, they both died when she was only 5. She was brought up by a cold grandmother who afforded little affection. Eleanor was often lonely. She attended various schools for girls, and it was the Allingwood Academy in London where she was influenced by her headmistress, who taught her about feminism and social justice. When she returned home, she became active in combating poverty in communities. Franklin and Eleanor met in 1902. They were fifth cousins, but had little communication with each other growing up. Franklin's mother disapproved of their relationship, but a romance blossomed in the early days anyway, and they kept up secret correspondence for over a year before announcing the fact that they decided they were going to get married. And it was Eleanor who actually influenced Franklin's political interests in social justice. Without her, we might not have so much of the social safety net that, well, even though it's being deteriorated, we had. And during their courtship, Eleanor and Franklin, they would accompany each other on visits to the poor in New York, and Franklin was appalled at the plight of people living in poverty. He couldn't believe it because, in his bubble, he never actually got to see how the poor actually lived. So Franklin made social justice and easing the plight of the less fortunate a keynote in his political work. So they got married in 1905. They started a family. They were together 13 years. Eleanor devoted herself to her husband and children, and Franklin starts a political career. The marriage wasn't without problems. Franklin did carry on a succession of affairs despite his career and growing family. But you have to remember, they were a product of their time. They lived in a time when that sort of thing was, it wasn't frowned upon like it is today. In 1918, Eleanor discovered that her husband had been carrying on with their secretary, Lucy Mercer, and she was hurt, but you couldn't get a divorce back then. So she stayed with him and made the best of it, and instead decided to influence his political life. And then when he was stricken with polio, his mother and other family members tried to encourage him to retire from public life, but it was her that convinced him to remain in politics. And he went ahead and did all the things that he accomplished. She worked with trade unions to promote better working conditions, especially for women and minorities. They supported a 48-hour work week at the time. That was unheard of. They ended child labor. They had a designated hours for a work week and minimum wage. And during Franklin's term as governor of New York, Eleanor traveled everywhere and became his eyes and ears. So throughout all of these efforts, it was Franklin and Eleanor as stalwart supporters of one another at a time when political wives basically just put on tees. And he allowed her to do the things that she cared about, and she became an equal partner in that marriage. And we get the idea that partnership can take many faces. And I think we have one last picture of them. I think that was actually them on their wedding day. So just to close this, I would just like to encourage you to think about your life, because you are the architect of your life. And is your life one of more domination or more partnership? And what can you do, whether it's who you vote for or who you work for or who you spend your time with away from work? Are these people who are going to help you grow? Are these people who care about you? Or are these people who are dominating you in some form or fashion? And is there anything you can do about it to break free of those shackles? Thank you.
Reverend Karen Tate.